I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. A graduate of Luther College High School here in Regina, he started off as a plumbing apprentice, but he had an idea, a passion, and a willingness to approach business differently. Taylor Weisgerber took it upon himself to do things differently. He's the founder of Spartan Mechanical, and he approaches business, life, and his customers with a friendliness, outgoingness, and straight talk approach that his customers have come to know, like, and trust. Welcome, Taylor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Barb. Thanks very much for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. So tell me a little bit about how Spartan Mechanical came to be.
Well, that's a bit of a long story, Barb. It all started back in 2012, maybe even as far back as 2011 to take you back into high school. I had a couple different options on my plate of what I truthfully wanted to do in ran his own plumbing business, which I was fortunate enough to be brought into. I worked for him for 2.5 years. It was probably the longest 2.5 years of my life. Other people listening to the show might know exactly how well working for family can go over at different points in time. So after that, I had already started working on my apprenticeship to get my Red Seal endorsement. I worked for another business here in the city for another 2.5 years. It was the best 2.5 years of my life in the trade.
Okay.
I had received my journeyman certificate, or a journey person for those concerned. After that point, I went out to Alameda for about 8 months, and I worked in the plumbing and gas fitting industry out that way in a rural setting to try and widen my horizons. At that point, I had come back to Regina, and I wanted something different. I wanted something for myself, not only for myself to be proud of, but a point that can grow myself as a person, as an individual, and as the Army would say, be the best that you can be.
Sure. So take me back even a little bit further. When you were in high school, what made you think that you wanted to get into plumbing? Or was it simply that there was a family business there? Or was there really anything until you got into it? How did that come to be?
I never wanted to do plumbing. When I was in elementary school, I mean, if you said what your parents did for work, mom did this, my stepdad did plumbing. Well, that was the butt end of so many jokes. And at that point, it was what it was, right? When I first started out, I was actually gearing towards going into the IT field or something more of a support specialist role. The one thing that I really attribute to my qualities is my ability to speak and my ability to guide. I've got a real knack for being able to go in the back of my mind and lead people through certain issues. It's really benefited both, personally as well as entrepreneurially.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense. And that's not necessarily a skill that we would associate with the trade sometimes. And not that trades don't require leadership. It's just not a skill that you hear people talk about. So, how have you approached the business differently? What did you see out in the field? I'm talking with my hands. What did you see out in the field versus what are you doing now to actualize that change?
The one big thing that I saw in the field is I've got a lot of colleagues, and they do beautiful, amazing work, artistic work, or, depending on the customer, they do it fast, they do it efficient, and they do it proper. The one biggest thing that I see in our industry is an undervalue of a person's true value, right? And that stems down to the leadership role. The one thing I want to do is I want to develop great people. I want to make people the best that they can be, in the truest sense of the word. I want them to do quality work and basically extend themselves to any customer, whether it's ours when we get to that point, or whether if they want to go out on their own, to theirs. We want to provide a great experience. We want to build an idea of, kind of a family mentality. Right. As much as you can in the business world, right? We want to build a support system for our future staff, but as well for our customers.
Yeah. And just based on our conversation that we had before we kicked off today, you have some really long-term visions for this business. This isn't a 5-year, make a bunch of money, head to Hawaii kind of thing. You've got some really long-term visions for this business. So can you talk a little bit about that, and where does that come from? Because not all business owners have that type of approach.
Yeah, for sure. So the one thing is, growing up, we didn't have a lot. Growing up, we grew up just on the north side of the tracks, almost dang near in the thick of it. And so growing up, we got to see a lot of stuff that was interesting, to say the least. Could be very interesting. And the one aspect that really stuck out of my mind is, support for people who are, low on the log, for lack of a better term. Yeah. And the kind of long-term business goal that I do have is I want to venture out into a bit of philanthropy, right? And I may be able to achieve that goal. I might not be able to achieve that goal, but I want to see better things for, the centered people in Regina. I want to see better things and better opportunities available, and find ways to extend those opportunities to the people that really require and need them. I don't want to just give people, money or, resources indefinitely. I want to create opportunities for them to build themselves up, but also kind of give a bit of a nudge, but help them up the ladder along the way. I don't want to see people do bad. I know my mom had hard times, and she sacrificed for me and my sister indefinitely. And if there's anyone that I can, help in any other way, that's my next 40 years. That's, my retirement plan. If I can be that person for Regina, that's going to be my goal and what I work towards.
And obviously those are very admirable goals, but what I really like about what you said there is the hand up versus the hand out, right? That whole mentality around teach someone to fish, and you've actually given them a skill that can help them build a life, where just giving them, the fish is a totally different thing. So that's a very unique mentality. What does that actually look like in your business right now? Can you articulate how you're living that, or just even starting to live that?
Absolutely. You know what? We've done a couple things. Regina Early Learning and Development Center, haven't done a lot with, where we're starting to work a little more hands in hands, and hopefully that relationship will continue. The one other thing that I see is you got to work on the youth, right? Because, as cliche as it sounds, the youth are our future. And it's, nature and nurture, right? What kind of situation do they see themselves in? So I was lucky enough to do some pro bono work for the Regina Early Learning and Development Center. As simple as it was, that's kind of the way we're going to start out. And through building a better business, through building better clients, through, building a better capital account, and developing from that point on, that's kind of where we're going to grow from there.
Yeah. And, it's exciting to be able to think that far in the future, and how that actually supports your business. Because for a lot of entrepreneurs, we look at the bottom line and we think this is business. But in fact, the support that we provide across a community has so much more to do with how rich our business will be. And we all still have to pay the bills. But then, then there's life beyond bills being paid. And my business partner and I have had that conversation a few times, because he's very driven by that bottom line. This is how much we made this month. This is what our expenses were. And my approach is, but at the same time, we got time with the kids, or we got to go somewhere. That was obviously a while ago. And so those are the experiences. So I'm a very experiential person. Let's do stuff. Versus, because you can't take it with you. It can sit in a bank account, but you can't take it with you, right?
Yeah.
So what does the Spartan team look like? Is there you and how many people?
You know what? There's a lot of people.
Okay.
Now, people that are on payroll, that's another question, right? There's a lot of people backing me, which I appreciate. I've got my amazing fiance. She's been nothing but an awesome support for myself in doing this venture, whether that's home cooked meals, or whether that's even, doing a couple of other things, running parts if need be. I've got my mother who's backed me. As far as on the payroll goes, it is just myself for now. and some core accounting staff, stuff like that, that's subcontracted. We're kind of working on that growth. We're trying to get in a position where, I'm comfortable enough that I'm guaranteeing the next person who's going to be hired on at Spartan is going to get what they're worth, receive the benefits that they're worth. I don't feel like a company should really grow unless they're able to provide some of those key aspects. They might feel that they're ready to grow, but they haven't done enough homework or enough trimming of their own fat to necessitate that extra person. They can streamline their business. They can focus on their proper customer base instead of overextending themselves. As we were talking about before, when you focus on that customer base where you specialize in, you're going to grow your business exponentially because of your experience, which is your value. Anybody can sweat two pipes together, but to do it with, a proper arrangement in mind or safety in mind, that's a whole nother story.
Yes, absolutely. It's interesting. We general contracted the build of our house. So we hired each of our trades individually. We got to know them. We had personal relationships with them. We had some really good experiences. We had some really poor experiences. And I remember one time in particular, doesn't matter what trade it was, there was a specific way that the whole house plan had been done, that we wanted something done. And the tradesperson, even though they quoted the job a certain way, wanted to change it, and it was quite clear they wanted to do something that was going to take less time and cost them less. But from an aesthetic standpoint, it was really going to detract from the aesthetics for us. So my husband and I are very good at sort of good cop, bad cop. So he talked with the tradesperson, came in, told the story, and he was kind of like, oh, I don't know. Let's talk with Barb. So I pull out my steel-toed boots. I come out to the house to meet the tradesperson. They explain what they want to do. I am literally crawling up the 2x4s in the wall and saying, no, this is how it's happening.
Yeah.
And honest to goodness, the poor man just stood there, looked at me and said, okay, yeah, we can make it work. Right? And so when I hear what you're talking about in terms of, doing things differently, those are the things that we as consumers, those are the stories that we retell, because those are the experiences that made a mark. Now, had the contractor came to us and said, hey, we can do it better, instead of, oh, we want to take shortcuts, it's a completely different experience, right? And so, being able to do that sort of thing. Now, you do both residential and commercial, because you talked about HVAC and gas fitting. So, what is your bailiwick? What services do you provide to customers?
Yeah, so you know what? When I worked for the previous businesses that I was employed by, we took care of a lot of really great places in the city. We took care of multi-unit dwellings, apartments. When I was with my second, business employed, we took care of Regina Public School Board for a huge portion. So a lot of my experiences come with, large scale structures. That's not to say that we don't do residential, but with these large scale structures, one of the big things that I was able to become more comfortable around was with boiler systems, air handler units, which might not be as key placement in some of our residential homes. Some have boilers, believe it or not, but most are forced air heat. So my background is really logic and troubleshooting. If there's a piece of equipment, and it's not working right, can I fix it? More than likely I can, but you know what? If I don't, I've got colleagues that I can extend myself out to in the industry that may have a leg up on me, so that we can solve the problem. Because at the end of the day, it's not about, specifically who's solving the problem. It is to a degree. You got to be comfortable with your contractor, but you want that problem solved. And you know what? I hate to say, when it comes to, things like that, I would rather trust the doctor who's willing to take the 5 minutes to research my issue than someone who's just going to wing it on a whim.
Yes.
So that's kind of what my original scope was. We are doing residential, right? As an entrepreneur, it's a very much, basic approach. You take what you can get and you keep building on that. You build those relationships. So you know what? I didn't have a lot of choice, right? When I started, I did have a couple of contacts in the industry. I had some that were ready to jump ship completely and wholeheartedly for me. I had
Okay.
others that were more, we want to see how you do first, because we don't
Right.
want to burn a bridge into someone who in our
Yes.
industry, it happens a lot,
Okay.
works for 6 months and is kaput. So my other scope as far as the HVAC side goes is we deal with, residential air conditioning. We
Okay.
deal with furnaces. We deal with ductwork, right? We've got an awesome crew of people that we can tap into as a resource to supply all of these different things that a customer may want. But our
Right.
real specialty and what I'm geared towards is boiler work. I love
Okay.
boilers.
Yeah.
They are probably the best thing going in any building. I don't care who says what.
They're fascinating. Yeah. Isn't it funny?
Oh,
We all
yeah.
have our thing that just fascinates us. So when you look at the industry as a whole, and like I'm even thinking broadly, the trades, are you seeing companies starting to merge and create more large companies, or are you seeing
Yeah.
more solopreneurs like yourself?
It's difficult to say because I've been approached already, in about the 2 years that I've had my business, multiple times on either shutting down my business and going into, a strategic management role for other businesses. I've had other businesses that have wanted to amalgamate and operate under their name. Generally, as our trade goes, there's a lot of businesses, a lot of bigger businesses that do a lot of new construction.
Yeah.
They hire quick and they fire faster, right? Or lay off faster, depending
Okay.
on who it is. So we got a lot of these guys that come from a new construction background, which never to knock them, because they can pipe new systems like nobody's business. They could do circles around me any day of the week, and I don't care who knows it. It's
Okay.
just the nature of the beast. A lot of these fellows will go and they do tend to start up their own businesses because you're out of work. You've got to feed your family. You've got no other choices. When all these companies are laying off or firing, where else are you going to go?
Yes.
Especially in a desaturated job market, right? You don't have all the options. And, even the true talents out there are finding it difficult to find work. So a lot of these people will start their new businesses, but they have a new construction background. We don't have a lot of new construction going on.
No.
It's taken me 8.5 years to know what I know, Barb, in terms of the service world. I don't expect anyone to walk in and start their first day and know what they're doing with flushometers, with boiler systems, right? When they were used to running water lines or sewage. And that brings it back. Every day is a school day.
Yes.
And I don't know everything. I don't expect everyone else to know everything. It's one of the biggest things that's frustrating for me to see with other people in the industry is, this perpetuation of that cycle.
Yeah. You know what? I love that approach. Every day is a school day.
Yeah.
When, if that's the mentality that you have, when you get out of bed in the morning, what am I going to learn today versus, what do I have to do? Right? Like that's a real mental shift. And I don't know if you've ever even heard yourself say that or if it's very intentional in your language, but that's a really cool statement because if you're not learning something every day, then like, what are you doing? I mean, you're kind of on the downhill slide then, right?
Exactly.
One of the things that I found really interesting when I started my business, and same thing, I started as a solopreneur. And, I would go and I would build a website for a company or I would set up their social channels. And one of the best lessons I think that I learned early on was the more I shared and asked for collaboration and asked for support, the more my business grew. And it's a little bit opposite what you expect, because you think, well, if I have to share this project with somebody, I'm only going to get half the revenue and they're going to get the other half. But they would get half and I would get half, and we'd get 2 more jobs out of it instead of only 1 more. And it was like, oh, this multiplier effect, like this is kind of cool. I like this.
Yeah, well, exactly. And even in your situation, if you got a half and a half, well, is it really a half and a half? No, because you're bringing in 2 holes, right?
Right.
You're going to double that revenue because you're 2 experts bringing in your contacts, everybody that you want the same, kind of, end result, right? Everybody wants that same end result. Everybody does want that big dollar amount at the end of the day. But what they choose to do with it, that's always the big question, right? And that's what determines one entrepreneur from another.
Exactly. And I think to your comments earlier, when we're talking about growing the business and bringing that second person on, when you really have a clear vision for your company, it's hard to bring someone into the fold because you want them to interact with customers and represent the brand in the same way you do. And that was one of the hardest things for me, was start to say, you know, you other person, like, go and work directly with, you know, this client. And we would talk a lot about it, and we would talk about what was important to me. But all you can do is example by, you know, lead by example. And then you have to have faith in people.
Yeah.
Right.
And
So
you're
that was,
exactly right. You're totally right in every sense of the word, right? The one thing that, you know, I grew from an understanding from, you know, talking to other people in the trades, or, you know, looking at different resources for trades entrepreneurs. The one biggest thing that they said, put in your mindset, put in your toolboxes, you run your business in a very specific way, and you've got very different, you know, ideas for your business and the way you want things done and how you want the T's crossed and the I's dotted. But you have to come to the realization that nobody is you. You are the only you, unless you're twins, but in a mental capacity, that still doesn't hold true, right? You are the only you. You're going to have the same values that you've held forever. Not everybody and not anybody will hold all the same values that you will. And you know what? A lot of the other entrepreneurs that are maybe thinking about hiring or getting to that break-even point, come to that understanding. You've got to know that you will never have somebody who is the spitting image of you. And the sooner that you can realize that, the sooner you might be able to make that leap forward.
Exactly. And the challenge is, how do you harness that to grow your business versus to have your business shrink? Right?
Find the faults. Find the faults, right? Work on those faults. My past employers that I spent 2.5 years with, they're going to remain nameless, but it was the best 2.5 years that I had in the trade. They did everything to build you up as the individual, right? They wanted to have full confidence in you. And you know what? I screwed things up. But you know what? At the end of the day, the company atoned, I atoned for what I had screwed up, or we had screwed up as a team. And we moved on, right? And it was always a learning opportunity. But it's, as an employer, you know, you need to take that approach, a positive approach. And you know what? People are either going to be receptive or they're not. And that's going to bring you to your next question. Do you keep them? Do you work on them? What do you want? What do they want? Right? And that's going to be it.
Exactly. Not every employee is going to have that same sort of approach, right? So I don't know if you can hear in the background or not, but of course we're still recording from home, and my dog is at the office door here, and he's like, let me in, let me in. He's completely perturbed. He can hear voices in here, and usually he comes and goes as he pleases. He's not particularly impressed with me right now. So
I can't blame
off that there. So you talked about values. Do you have kids yet?
Not yet. But if it was up to me, we'd have 3. If it's up to my fiance, we have 2. We're still working on that. That's still a debatable item. I can hear her chopping away in the kitchen here. Yeah, you know what? That's kind of what we have in our mind. We were engaged last year. We had a lovely engagement, and you know, like I said before, she's really integral into me being who I am and being able to do what I'm doing. Yeah.
So it's interesting because I've always understood what values are, but until I had kids, which is years ago now, until I had kids, I really didn't appreciate how different everyone's values are. What we value, what someone else values, right? And that gave me such an appreciation for how different we are all raised. And so the differences, like, they start right at the very beginning, right? It was an eye-opening experience for me. I remember, you know, coming home and just shaking my head and being like, wow, okay, I now understand this totally different. Taylor, I have kind of lost track of time. So quickly, we're going to wrap up the show. But before we do, can you let everyone know how they would get a hold of you?
Yeah, you know what? Again, everybody, thanks for listening to us rabble on and have this discussion. I do appreciate everybody's time. The couple best ways to get a hold of us are through Facebook. Facebook is kind of for our target demographic. So we are Spartan Mechanical Services Limited. Feel free to check us out. We've got some great photos of our work. We've got some great reviews. And of course, you know, good old cell phone. Get on that phone, ring those phones, as you know, Telemiracle would say, and don't ever hesitate to reach out to us. We'll always approach you with a smile and a friendly attitude.
Awesome. That is fantastic. So thank you, Taylor, for being with me here today. For anyone listening, of course, if you'd like to find Spartan Mechanical, just plug them in Google and you'll find their business listing there on the right-hand side. Thank you for talking to me about how you're approaching I'll say a traditional industry very differently. Know, like, and trust is not necessarily something that folks will often associate in the plumbing field. And so I think you're doing some fantastic things.
Awesome. Thank you, Barb.
Absolutely. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can email me at barb@googlegirl.ca or reach out on Facebook and Instagram at AboveTheFoldCA. Just a reminder, you can even submit questions in advance of the live show on our Facebook page. When we're live, unfortunately, we're not right now. I'm your host, Barb McGrath, local business owner and Google Girl. Remember, you worked hard for your success. Don't keep it a secret. Bye for now.